Happy Tuesday to you, fellas. Well, as you know, this week is my countdown. This week is my countdown. This is going to be my last week, and I've given already 2 or 3 reminders, but this is going to be my last week doing YouTube videos for about the next, starting with September 1st. I won't be doing any YouTube videos for about the next 4.5 to 5 weeks. Again, for my Patreon subscribers, I will still be uploading content for my Patreon subscribers, and I will still do 2 live streams for my Patreon subscribers. I always do a minimum of 2 live streams for my Patreon subscribers. But as far as content that's available to for free to the YouTube general public, because again, the main reason why is because next month is the month where my wife will be giving birth to my son, my first child, and I'm going to be doing things related to preparing for that monumentous event in my life. So so this video right here will probably either be my next to last or third from last video for this month. I'll probably, after today, I might do 1 more video at most. The most I'm going to do is maybe 2 more videos between tomorrow and Sunday. The most videos I do is probably 2 more, but there's at least a 50% chance I'm only going to do 1 more video after this one. So just to let you know. Now, you remember a few weeks ago, I mentioned that I used to, this year, probably more than any year since I've been on YouTube, with the possible exception of 2017, definitely compared to 2018, and even more so compared to 2019, I've jumped on a lot of panels, live stream panels this year. I think I've jumped on more live stream panels in the last 7 to 8 months than I did at any 7 to 8 month period since I've been on YouTube. But I hadn't been on a panel in a while. I hadn't been on that many, before yesterday, I hadn't really been on hardly any panels for at least a 3 or 4 week period. Excuse me, burp. But, and I told the fellas, because they predicted, they said, I bet you're going to do a video about this tomorrow. And I actually said no. I said 90% chance, no, I'm not going to do a video. So you could say I'm making a liar out of myself, because I told them, I said 90% chance I'm not going to do a video talking about what happened. But when I woke up this morning, I'm not going to lie, I was like, I got to make a video. I have to. What happened was, I'm not going to mention the young brother's name, but me and him have had some spirited debates. Now, I don't dislike this particular young brother. He just says a lot of stuff that I happen to disagree with. But I don't, as a person, I don't dislike him. But anyway, 2 things happened. Number 1, this young brother I'm referring to, again, I'm not going to say his name, but he did a video or audio review of my Mode 1 audiobook. So that was number 1. He did a Mode 1 review of my audiobook. He did an audio review of my Mode 1 audiobook. And he basically, now I haven't listened to that yet. I only got a chance to listen to about 5 to 10 minutes of his actual review of my Mode 1 audiobook. So I haven't listened to the actual review. I think the review I want to say it was about an hour and 15 minutes, at most maybe an hour and a half. About an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. Then, about a half hour after he ended the review, he had a post-review panel discussion. Like on the review, it was just him talking. He didn't have anybody on the live stream panel with him. Then he ended that review. Then about, I want to say roughly a half hour to an hour after he ended the review, he did a panel discussion in relation to the review. Now, I have some criticisms of that. And that's what a lot of my commentary in this video is going to address. Number one, it went way too long. If you go to his channel, if I was to tell you his channel, the panel discussion in relation to the review ended up being like 10 and a half hours long. Yep, I'm not even joking. I didn't even think you could do more than 8 hours in a row. It literally ended up being 10 and a half hours long. Now, I didn't participate for all 10 and a half of those hours. I think I was only on there for about maybe 4 of those hours. Yeah, I probably participated about 4 of it. But yeah, the whole thing was 10 and a half hours. And probably 3/4 of the discussions they were having in that post-review panel discussion didn't have nothing to do with my book. They kind of start going all over the place. They start going all over the place. So if you were to go and listen to it, it would be a waste of your time, because now, the actual review itself totally centered around my Mode 1 audiobook. This young brother highlighted what he thought were the strengths of my audiobook and what, in his opinion, were some of the weaknesses of my audiobook. And then again, he had a post-review panel discussion. Yeah, I would say probably 2/3 or 3/4 of the post-review panel discussion had nothing to do with my book. Like, literally, it had nothing to do with my book. I would say at best only about 1/3 of that 10 and a half hour panel, post-review panel discussion was directly related to my book. Now, I think y'all know how I am on panels. If you don't know, let's just say a lot of people have suggested I need to go to anger management classes when it comes to me participating in panels, particularly with other black men. Because I've been on a few panels with non-black people. I rarely have gone off. When I've been on panels with non-black men.
Take your medicine.
I would even say black women. I've been on a handful of panel discussions with black women. I've never had a shouting match with black women. Yeah. So if there's 2 groups of people I've rarely, if ever, had shouting matches with, is non-black men and black women. But a lot of black men, I don't want to generalize. I did a video. If y'all remember, I did a video where I kind of honestly went in on a lot of young brothers. And I expressed a disclaimer. I don't want to generalize all young black men. I definitely don't want to make that mistake of evaluating all young black men on the behavior of just a handful of young black men. So I never want to do that. Because that's unfair. But here, I'll just get to here's the thing, man. Here's what's insulting to me. And I've expressed this before. Here's what's insulting to me. Number one, I'm a published book author. Some of my books have been ranked on Amazon. I've had at least one of my books that was ranked number 1 in its category on Amazon. Okay? That was my 2017 updated version of Mode 1. That book, that ebook, right now, that's only an ebook. It's not in paperback. But that 2017 updated ebook, it was number 1 in the category of communication skills in 2017. It rose to as high as #1. And then all of my ebooks, actually, and even a couple of my paperbacks, have been at minimum in the top 10 in their respective categories on Amazon. What does that tell you? That tells you that I know what the fuck I'm talking about. In simple, blunt terms. It tells you I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And I don't like it when people, really people, period, but particularly guys who are significantly younger than me, try to talk to me like they know as much or more about interpersonal communications with the opposite gender than I do. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because if you did, you would have a best-selling book instead of me. You got that? If your knowledge, overall level of knowledge, wisdom, and insight related to dealing with women, and more specifically related to the interpersonal communication skills that are necessary and beneficial for dealing with women, was better than me, your book would be outselling mine. Number one, you would have a book, because most of the guys who challenge me don't have a book. And if you had a book, your book would be outselling mine. So there was at least 2, maybe as many as 3 specific portions of that post-review panel discussion where I'm not going to lie, I went the fuck off. And at least one of those 3 times I went off, I did kind of offer a semi-apology. Because I probably did. But again, I just don't like when people try to act like, somebody younger than me tries to act like they've had as many, if not more, experiences with women than I have. I've had 35 years worth of experience being mode 1 with women. Not 2 years, not 3 years, not 5 years, not 10 years. I've been mode 1. I've been exhibiting what I refer to as mode 1 behavior with women since I was 21 years old. I'll give you the specific month. Was August of 1984. That's when I first started exhibiting what I now refer to as mode 1 behavior. Yeah, the first month I started exhibiting mode 1 behavior with women was August of 1984. That was 36 years ago. Yeah, it was this month. It was actually, now that I think about it, it was 36 years ago this month. So I say 35, but it's actually 36 years. Yeah, I've been, all this year, I've been saying it's 35 years, but actually it's 36 years. Yeah, you could say this very month, the month of August, marks my 36-year anniversary exhibiting mode 1 behavior with literally thousands, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of women. Thousands of women. What does that tell you in simple terms? I know what I'm fucking talking about. I done heard every conceivable argument, criticism, counterpoint against mode 1 that a man can possibly hear. And that was the first thing that kind of irritated me on this panel, is that there's at least 2 or 3 guys that were expressing criticisms, commentary, and or counterpoints that they felt were like criticisms, commentary, counterpoints that I had never heard before. I've heard everything, every possible criticism there is of my mode 1 approach. I've heard it 100 times. I've heard it 100 times. I've literally heard, there is no criticism you can give me at this point of my mode 1 approach that I have not heard a minimum of 100 times. There's not one criticism or counterpoint you could give me that I have not heard a minimum of 100 times. Starting with the mid to late 1990s. I've heard them all, man. I've done various videos about them. I've heard literally every fucking criticism, counterpoint there is. Matter of fact, one of the videos I did earlier this year was called The Top 5 Dumbest and or Most Invalid Criticisms of Mode 1. the top 5 dumbest and or most highly invalid criticisms of my Mode 1 approach. And, well, actually, I'm gonna go through them real quick. There's a lot of criticisms and counterpoints I've heard, but of all my years, if I want to start with the mid to late 90s up until now, this is what would arguably be my top 5. This is what would arguably be my top 5. I'll start with what I would call my 5th most frequently expressed criticism or counterpoint. I'll start with my 5th most, and I'm not going to go into long detail giving a response because, I already did a video about these 5 criticisms, but I just want to quickly remind, this is what I'll arguably call my top 5 I get the most. Argument number 5, Mode 1 only benefits men who are exceptionally smooth, charming, and verbally seductive. Mode 1 only benefits men who are exceptionally smooth, charming, and verbally seductive. Now, if you remember, that one I didn't totally disagree with. Actually, that's one criticism and counterpoint I do not totally disagree with. The only thing I would disagree with to do with that particular criticism or counterpoint is the use of the word only. If you replace the word only with primarily, if you replace the word only with the word primarily, I would actually agree with that. Yeah, so if that was to say Mode 1 primarily benefits men who are exceptionally smooth, charming, and verbally seductive, you would actually get no argument on that particular criticism or counterpoint. I just mainly disagree with the word only. Because here's what I would say without getting too lengthy. When it comes to seducing women that I refer to as wholesome pretenders, which I'm going to touch on as this video goes on, wholesome pretenders, and even more so, erotic hypocrites, women who are sexually duplicitous, erotic hypocrites. When it comes to seducing those 2 types of women and getting them in bed, you do have to be exceptionally smooth, charming, and verbally seductive. And that's part of what my one-on-one face-to-face coaching is for. That's why I get paid the big dollars. Matter of fact, on a quick side note, if there was one point during that post-review panel discussion where I shut a lot of these guys up who were trying to come at me, I said, how many guys on this panel have gotten paid a minimum of $5,000 for a one-on-one face-to-face coaching session from a male client to help improve their success with women? Silence. Why are you arguing with somebody who's been paid as much as $5,000 for a 2 or 3 day session with a male client? If your body of knowledge, wisdom, and insight was more powerful than mine, they would be paying you $5,000 instead of me. They would be paying you $5,000 instead of me. But, yeah, when it comes to seducing wholesome pretenders and erotic hypocrites, yeah, you do. You got to have a powerful mouthpiece. I've said that multiple times. You got to have a powerful mouthpiece. Here's where I would partially disagree, though, with that particular counterpoint. When it comes to using Mode 1 to quickly identify rejectors, which is women who are just completely just not interested in engaging in any form of sexual relations with you, and when it comes to quickly identifying the women I refer to as manipulative time wasters, which are women who are not interested in engaging in sexual relations with you, but they're willing to give you the misleading impression that they are. So when it comes to identifying rejectors and manipulative time wasters, that's where I would disagree with that 5th counterpoint, because you don't need to have a smooth or seductive mouthpiece to identify a rejector or a manipulative time waster. You just need to have the balls to be verbally straightforward. You don't have to be verbally seductive. You just need to be verbally straightforward to identify those two types of women. So that's my fifth most frequently expressed criticism / counterpoint. Number four. The fourth most one is Mo 1 only benefits men who possess an exceptionally handsome face and or an above average physique. Mo 1 only benefits men who possess an exceptionally handsome face and or an above average physique. Again, similar to criticism / counterpoint number 5, the main problem I have with that statement is the word only. Is the word only. It doesn't. I know for a fact that's not true. I know for a fact. Mo 1 does not only benefit men who have an exceptionally handsome face or an exceptionally lean, muscular physique. That's not true. Now, most guys who have a good-looking face and or a great-looking physique probably could conceivably benefit more from Mo 1 than guys who don't have either one of those things. But I would never say that Mo 1 only benefits guys who have either an above average looking face and or an above average looking body. So that's my fourth most frequently expressed criticism and counterpoint of my Mo 1 approach. I just covered that in my last video. My very last video touched on issues related to this fourth one. Now, revisiting my third most frequently expressed criticism and counterpoint. Mo 1 only, there's that use of the word only. Mo 1 only works on women who are extremely kinky and or highly promiscuous, i.e. slut types. Mo 1 does not help you get women in bed who are very classy, prudish, strictly monogamy oriented, and or relationship and marriage oriented. False. I'm not going to get more long-winded than that. That's false. That's false. And I'll put a $25,000 bet on anybody who wants to challenge me. If you got $25,000 to bet on me, put your money up so I can shut you the fuck up. I'm a money man. Put your money up or shut the fuck up. I'll embarrass you and take your money. I'll embarrass you and take your money. I'll embarrass you and take your money. Get it? Got it? Good. Next one. Because of the current Me Too movement, using ARC's Mo 1 approach with women will cause you to end up in jail, or at minimum will cause you to get fired from your job. You can see me shaking my head. See, this is the one, I would say arguably of the 5 I'm highlighting, 5 most frequently expressed criticism counterpoints against Mo 1. This is probably the one that gets under my skin the most. And this is going to be at least half the basis of the remainder of this video, is this one right here. Because somebody said that on that post-book review panel discussion last night. There was at least one guy on the panel that said that shit. And so I'm going to lay out for the millionth time why that's bullshit. I'm going to lay out for the millionth time why that's bullshit. Anyway, let me move on to number 1, which was, and this number 1 was briefly discussed too, but more in a lighthearted manner. Number 1 dumb argument is direct verbal game, which includes ARC's Mo 1 approach, will cause you to leave opportunities for sex on the table that you could have taken advantage of if you had instead chosen to use some variation of indirect verbal game. Now, among other people, one of the number one people who promoted that counterpoint was Feliciano T. Collins, aka his pseudonym Alpha Male Strategy. Matter of fact, he promoted 2 of those 5 counterpoints. He promoted counterpoint number 1, the one I just read, and he's also promoted counterpoint number 2 about the whole Mo 1 will have you end up in jail talking point. Yeah, he's promoted 2 of those, but he ain't the only one. He ain't the only one. In his defense, he ain't the only one. There's a few people. Now, particularly with counterpoint number 2, there's quite a few people in the manosphere who have expressed counterpoint number 2. But this one about leaving pussy on the table, without getting too long, I'm explaining once again. You cannot leave pussy on the table if that pussy was never offered to you. Do you understand that? I'm specifically and intentionally speaking slowly so that you guys can understand that basic concept. Do you understand that? I gotta talk to you, some of you guys, like you are 3rd graders so that you will understand. You can't leave pussy on the table that's never been offered to you. For example, I've heard guys say, well, I've always said I don't take women out on dates in order to score casual sex, which was related to, I think, either my last video or my next to last video. I think it's my next to last video. Yeah, I said I don't take women out on dates. And I've had some guys say, well, damn, Alan, if you're not willing to take a woman out on at least 2 or 3 dates, then that means you're potentially leaving pussy on the table, man. Secondly, when it comes to my unwillingness to lie to a woman or manipulate a woman to get her in bed, I've had guys say, well, damn, Alan, if you're not willing to lie to a woman at all or mislead and manipulate a woman at all, then I hate to tell you this, but you're potentially leaving pussy on the table. Both of those are wrong. Here's the only time you can leave pussy on the table is when a woman has definitely offered you some pussy and then you respectfully turn it down. That's the only legitimate time you can leave pussy on the table. Is if a woman specifically said to you, hey, Charles, I am very sexually attracted to you and I very much want to have sex with you. But in order for me to agree to have sex with you, you got to promise to be my boyfriend for a minimum of the next 3 years. And you were to say, nah, if that's what's involved in having sex with you, if I have to publicly promote myself as your boyfriend, then I'm not willing to have sex with you. I'm sorry. I'm not willing to have sex with you under those circumstances. And the woman was like, okay, I gave you a chance to have sex with me, but if you're not willing to be my boyfriend for a minimum of the next 3 years, then you can't have it. And you say, yeah. See, that would be a legitimate example of you leaving pussy on the table. Or anything on the table. It could be money. Same with money. That's where the term comes from, the business world. Leaving money. The only time you can leave money on the table or leave an employment opportunity on the table is if that amount of money or that employment opportunity was officially offered to you and you respectfully turned it down because you didn't like some condition, some type of term or condition that accompanied that offer. That's what it means to leave something on the table. Is when somebody offers you something. It could be money, an employment opportunity, sexual companionship, and a few other things. When somebody offers you something and you respectfully decline it because there's something about the terms and conditions associated with whatever's being offered that you don't like. That is the official definition of leaving something on the table. If a woman has never made it clear to you that she's definitely interested in having sex with you, you ain't leaving shit on the table. You ain't leaving shit on the table. Get it? Got it? Good. Now, when I was growing up, and most of my non-black listeners and followers won't be familiar with this term. But if you're a middle-aged black person or older, middle-aged or older black person, let's say minimum, if you're roughly 35 years of age or older, this is one phrase you should be halfway familiar with. And that's the phrase, you don't believe fat meat is greasy. Have some of y'all heard that term? There's a term that my parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles used to use. They would say, if I was let's say there was a conversation and somebody was trying to advise me on something or offer me some type of cautionary warning, and they could tell I was being rebellious to that advice or hard-headed and stubborn in regards to that advice, they would say, okay, you don't believe fat meat's greasy. You don't believe fat meat's greasy. I'll give you one example. Where I grew up at, which was Gary, Indiana, we had a lot of train tracks. And sometimes with my mother in the car, I could see the train coming. Like the train might be a few yards away. But if I felt like I could beat that train, like say the train is coming and my car is right here, and I felt like I could beat that train, I would boldly cross those tracks and beat that train. And it would drive my mother crazy. I would damn near give her a heart attack. She would be like, son, like, in so many words, she didn't use a lot of profanity, but basically she would be like, son, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? And I would basically be like, what? She'd be like, one of these days you're going to try to be risky and outrun that train, and something's going to happen with the car. It's going to stall, and you're going to get hit, and you're going to die. But knowing you don't believe fat meat's greasy. What that means is when somebody say you don't believe fat meat's greasy, that basically means you're going to have to learn the hard way. That's what that means. You're going to have to learn the hard way. That's typical people who are going to say that to you is people who are trying to give you some advice because they've experienced a lot of things. They know more than you. And they're trying to give you some advice, but because you think either one or two things, you think you know more than them, or you just think they're giving you invalid advice, you kind of, your ears become deaf to their advice. And that's what provokes people to say, usually it's a parent who says that, a grandparent, an older sibling, aunt or uncle, or somebody who's like a teacher or a mentor. They're going to tell you that. If they can tell you're being a combination of rebellious and hard-headed, they're going to say, okay, you don't believe fat meat's greasy. You don't believe fat meat's greasy. Here's the thing, man. And this relates to this post-book review panel discussion. I would say for 3/4 of my time on that panel discussion, I was very calmly composed. It was just kind of a respectful, spirited debate. Yeah, I'd say for about at least 3/4 of the time I spent on the panel discussion last night, it just represented a spirited debate. But there's at least 2 or 3 instances where I blew a gasket. There's at least 2, minimum 2, and as many as 3 different specific portions of that panel discussions where I just honestly went the fuck off. The very first time was either directly or indirectly related to that counterpoint number 2. The host of the panel discussion, again, I'm not going to involve his name, but we were talking about different, well, here's the first thing I say, man. Here's what irritates me, man. I've talked about this before. Do you know no less than 80 to 90% of the time guys want to express criticisms against my Mode 1 approach, it's almost always exclusively related to my Mode 1 hardcore approach. I say on average 4 out of every 5 times that guys express criticisms about my Mode 1 approach is almost always in specific relation to my Mode 1 hardcore approach. I never get criticized when it comes to Mode 1.5. Never. I can't name one person, whether it was just a regular guy in the manosphere or some kind of rival dating coach or rival PUA that has tried to criticize Mode 1.5. I never get criticisms related to Mode 1.5. And when it comes to my, just what I call my normal default version of Mode 1, I would say at best only maybe 20%. I'd say only about 15 to 20% of my criticisms have been in relation to normal Mode 1. But 80 to 90% of my criticisms is always in relation to Mode 1 hardcore. Mode 1 hardcore. And without getting too detailed, what set me off was, well, really a combination of two things. One guy who wasn't the host of the panel said something to the effect of, Alan, I don't know why you encouraging guys to be Mode 1 hardcore, because you're gonna land some guy in jail. Show me the proof, or shut the fuck up. Show me the proof. Dude, I've said some of the most triple X-rated, sexually explicit comments to women of any man who's ever walked this earth. That is facts, not opinion. That is facts. There is not a human being alive. You listening to me? There is not a human heterosexual male alive who has said more triple X-rated words, phrases, and overall commentary to women than the man you listening to right here. What was that rapper? I think his name was Luke Campbell. I would make Luke Campbell look like a fucking choir boy and Boy Scout. And I'm not saying that lightheartedly. Because if you're not familiar with Luke Campbell, when it came to rappers back in the day, Luke Campbell was probably one of the first rappers that was known for using a lot of triple X-rated sexually explicit language. My experiences with women, I would make Luke Campbell look like a fucking choir boy. I used to go up to women when I was in my 20s. There were women that I would approach and the first thing out my mouth would be, I cannot wait to see my hard dick in your mouth. I would say that before I said, hello, how you doing? Or my name is Alan or anything. Literally the very first thing out of my mouth would be, I cannot wait to see my dick in your mouth and my balls on your chin. And I'm not making that up. People in my real life can vouch for me because they've seen it happen. Matter of fact, speaking of people who can vouch for me, just in the last week, I had a guy write me and he said something to the effect of, Alan, with all due respect, I think your Mode 1 approach, and particularly your Mode 1 hardcore approach, only works in the United States. But he said here in the United Kingdom, your Mode 1 approach in general, and more specifically your Mode 1 hardcore approach, that shit wouldn't fly. Oh, really now? Well, then you need to talk to Sasha Daygame. You need to talk to the former dating coach, Sasha Daygame. I was in London in November 2010. And Sasha Daygame witnessed me, I can name at least 4 instances where he witnessed me using X-rated or triple X-rated language with women within the first 3 to 5 minutes of the conversation. Now, on the negative end, did I end up having sex with any of these women? No, I didn't. So you can say that's the bad news. I didn't end up having sex with any of the women that I was X-rated with. But on the flip side, did I get arrested? Did I get thrown out of the establishments? Because 2 or 3 of the times I was in a restaurant. Did the women call security on me? No. And matter of fact, Sasha is one of the known people in the manosphere who's given me that endorsement. I've said this many times. Sasha told people, he said, Alan, I remember specifically when I was about to leave London, he said, Alan, I'm going to tell you. He said, I've hung around a lot of pickup artists, a lot of dating coaches. He said, you are hands down the most sexually straightforward and sexually explicit man I have ever hung around with in my life. That's what Sasha Daygame told me that either the day I left London or the day before I left London. He said, and he has. Sasha Daygame has hung around just about every major pickup artist, definitely non-black. I don't know about black guys, but definitely when it comes to non-black guys, he's hung around a few other black guys too. But definitely when it comes to most of the most well-known non-black pickup artists and dating coaches, he's hung around them all. And he was like, bruh, Sasha Daygame said, Alan, I've never hung around anybody in my life who is as verbally bold and sexually straightforward and explicit as you. Here's the thing, man. Two things, and then I'm going to wrap up and shut up. Two things, then I'm going to wrap up and shut up. Number one, and see, almost everything I'm about to say I already talked about. Almost everything I'm about to talk about, I already talked about. You need to watch the video. Two of the videos I uploaded on this channel, and then another video I did an interview with George Bruno's younger brother named Tony Bruno. So if you've already watched him, now if I'm preaching to the choir, just ignore the rest of this video because you already know. But I can tell by last night's panel discussion that a lot of guys, number one, they probably just don't watch my videos. They don't own my books. So they say shit that makes them think they know what they're fucking talking about, but they don't know what they're fucking talking about. So here's where the host of the panel kind of set me off, and I just start going off. Without getting too lengthy, he tried to suggest that, Alan, if you weren't Mo 1 hardcore, then you probably would have got a lot more pussy than you did. He basically said, and so I'm paraphrasing his words, but essentially he was basically like, I think the fact that you've been Mo 1 hardcore with a lot of women has actually prevented you from getting a lot of pussy. Because most women are turned off by sex talk that's too straightforward or too explicit. No, they're not. No, they're not. And this relates to why I said I get insulted when people think they know more about women than I do. I ain't never had a woman reject me because I was too straightforward and or too explicit. Not one fucking time. Not one fucking time. Do you know just about every woman who initially, keyword initially, criticized me for being too sexually straightforward and or too sexually explicit ended up having sex with me either minutes later, hours later, days later, weeks later, months later, and in a couple cases, years later. Every time. Every time. I'm talking about I am batting 1,000 in that category. Not one woman who rejected me made a big deal out of me either being too blunt or too explicit. Every woman that has rejected me, I mean genuinely rejected me, they never made mention of the fact that I was too blunt or too explicit. They just simply said, I'm not interested. I've never had a woman say to me, Alan, I would have had sex with you, but because of the fact that you were a little bit too blunt and a little bit too explicit, I changed my mind and lost interest. If you think women lose interest over a guy being too sexually straightforward and or too sexually explicit, then you do not understand sexually duplicitous women. Period. You don't. You don't. I make six figures. You don't. I have never, ever lost an opportunity to have sex with a woman because I was either too straightforward, i.e. too blunt, and or too explicit. Y'all don't understand. Y'all don't know what the fuck y'all don't understand sexually duplicitous women like I do. Matter of fact, this relates to the video where I was talking about the influence of the movie Talk Dirty to Me and Talk Dirty to Me Part 2 on me. Somebody asked me, they said, Alan, among other things, what would you say if you had to narrow down to just one thing? And this is what I talked about in my interview with Tony Bruno. I said, the number one thing I learned from watching those two movies is that women aren't turned off by sexually straightforward talk or sexually explicit talk. They will pretend like they are. Let me repeat that. They will pretend like they are, particularly the archetype of women I refer to as an erotic hypocrite, and to a lesser extent, wholesome pretenders. They will pretend like they're turned off by that type of talk, but they're not. They're not. Do it again. I'm going to say it again. Every single woman in my life that made a big deal, that went out of their way to highlight, Alan, you're too blunt, and or Alan, you're too explicit. Either later on that same day, I fucked that woman. A few days later, I fucked that woman. A few weeks later, I fucked that same woman. A few months later, I fucked that same woman. In 2 or 3 instances, over a year later, I fucked that same woman who made that comment. Every time. Not 50% of the time, not 75% of the time, literally 100% of the time. Drops mic. Every time. Every woman. And people have been one-on-one, face-to-face coaching clients of mine, Skype and telephone consultation clients of mine, and just most of my Patreon subscribers, they already know this. So for them, I'm preaching to the choir. They already know what I'm saying right now is true. Sexually duplicitous women are always going to try to give you the impression that they don't like something about your manner of verbal expression. That's what they do. And I'm going to tell you this, and you can take it for what it's worth. If a woman knows that all she has to do is harshly criticize you and insult you about something such as your language, and you're going to automatically modify your language to appease her, then she's going to immediately say, that motherfucker's a pussy. He's a bitch. He's a beta male. I can easily manipulate him. Immediate loss of respect. Immediate loss of respect. If a woman knows that she can manipulate you just by harshly criticizing you and insulting you, and that's going to provoke you to modify all your behavior and try to tame down your language and all that shit, she going to know you a bitch. You a punk. That's what she going to know about you, that you a punk. Drops mic again. And along the same lines, the host of this panel discussion, again, I don't remember all his exact words, but he was implying that Alan, and he almost said it in a kind of a, I felt, maybe I overreacted, but I felt like it was kind of at least semi-condescending. But in so many words, he was trying to say, Alan, I think the best way to get women in bed is really not to bring up sex at all. Is just use what conventional PUAs would call sub-communication. Sub-communication. He was trying to suggest or say that I think the best way to get a woman in bed is by non-verbally implying sex, but not to actually verbalize your sexual desires, interests, and intentions. An argument I've only heard like 300,000 times in the last 25 years. Seriously. That's an argument I've only heard like 325,000 times. And I'm not totally exaggerating. That's what probably the most notable person I always highlight in that category was this London-based PUA named Yad. That's basically what Yad said in London. When I was in London in November, he said that pretty much that exact same thing. He called Mode 1 approach dating suicide, and he said it was dating suicide to verbally and explicitly express your sexual desires, interests, and intentions with women. And that's when he started talking about sub-communication. Fuck sub-communication by itself. Now, again, I'm not anti-sub-communication. Let me make that clear. Let me clarify. I'm not anti-sub-communication. I think sub-communication works great when it works in combination with direct verbal game. If you combine direct verbal game with sub-communication, the two together work great. But sub-communication by itself, fuck that. Just be honest and say, I'm a verbal coward. I'd rather you just say, I'm a verbal coward. That's what I would rather you say than promote sub-communication by itself. I would rather you say, I don't have no balls, I ain't got no backbone, I'm a verbal coward. That's what I would rather hear you say. I'm a verbal coward, because that's what you are. You scared to say sexually straightforward, sexually explicit shit. In my book, Alan Roger Currie's book, you're a verbal coward. Give me your phone number, I'll tell you right now. You're a verbal coward. You're a verbal fucking coward. I ain't scared to say shit to a woman. And if you listen to my video, go back and listen to it. I'm not going to rehash everything. Here's the thing you got to understand, man. Here's the thing you got to understand, man. I already mentioned that I'm collaborating with the nation's #1 date, rape, and sexual assault prevention expert, Katie Costner. She's the nation's leading advocate and activist related to date rape prevention and sexual assault prevention. And she chose me to collaborate. Now, do you think she would choose me to collaborate if she felt like triple X-rated language was something that was totally inappropriate? Because she knows all about my background. She knows about my Mode 1 hardcore approaches. She knows about my highly risque mouth. She knows all that shit. You think she would choose to collaborate with me, being that she's a feminist, if she felt like that was something totally inappropriate? Do you really? I mean, honestly, you use this, man. Do you really? Here's what you guys got to understand, and this goes back to the host of this panel discussion saying that basically it's better to be nonverbal than verbal. He obviously didn't watch my recent video. In this day and age, the worst thing you can do, particularly if you're a college student, I would say in general, and particularly if you're a college student, the worst thing you could do is depend on non-verbal consent. That is the worst fucking thing you could do. Do you know on the vast majority of college campuses, starting with the year 2000, if you don't receive verbal consent from a woman before proceeding towards oral sex or intercourse, do you know you're putting yourself in a position where a woman can turn around and charge you with date rape? I already emphasized that in that video that I talked about this. You can be charged, particularly if that woman has alcohol or drugs in her system. So for all you guys saying, oh man, Alan, you shouldn't even talk about sex with women. You shouldn't even be verbal at all. You should just, use nonverbal means. Okay, Mr. Future Date Rape Charge. You don't believe fat meat's greasy. Because if you get charged with date rape, I ain't going to feel sorry for you. Like a popular dating coach that we all know, as I pointed out in another video. Yeah, y'all know who I'm talking about. He had 2 women accuse him of being a borderline date rapist, and he going around talking about Mode 1's going to cause you to go to jail, but he's the one that's been charged with being a borderline date rapist. Not me, him. I'm in Mode 1 for 36 years, not had one sexual harassment charge, not had one sexual misconduct charge, not had one sexual assault or date rape charge. Drops mic. My record in that area is clean. You need to get women to say, I want you to fuck me. That is to your benefit. The more silent a woman is before you have sex with her, the more you put yourself in harm's way. Do you all know who Brian Banks is? I'm going to leave you with his face for you to marinate on. Brian Banks wasn't Mole 1 hardcore with a woman. He was not Mole 1 hardcore with a woman. And guess what? He spent 5 years in prison for a date rape charge. Marinate on that. 5 years in prison because of a date rape charge. Research his story and then come back and talk to me.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, you're the fucking king. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
But the king would fuck me really good.
Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.
I have to agree with you on the communication piece, because I actually did take a session with Alan Roger Currie, and he gave me a line that I did not think was going to work, and it worked. And I was like, what the fuck?
Oh my God! Currie guys, man, he's the master. He's the master of the verbal seduction. He got that communication piece down pat.
It really worked. It just simply worked, and I just didn't think it was going to work at all.
Some guys have natural handles. Some guys have a better natural shot, but you can always improve your shot. And sex is damn sure something you can fucking learn. Look, dude, you want to learn how to talk better? I'm hiring Alan Roger Currie to get my dirty talk game on, because it's always been something I want to get better at.
Verbal seduction, man. I'm like, clearly, this guy's the Michael Jordan of seduction. Like, you know, come on now.